Okay, how about now?
Hey, now I can hear you.
All right, there we go.
All right. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Mid Tier Thoughts. It's your boy, Austin. Today I am joined by Cedar Sewing Co. I will let him introduce himself here in just a second. But yeah, welcome back, everybody. Welcome back for joining us again. We're glad you're here. Go ahead, man. Introduce yourself. Who are you? What do you do?
I am Josh. I run Cedar Sewing Company, and I make random shit for people that want it.
Okay, nice, nice. So like, what is it that you make?
Um, I make the Claymore bags. I make them med danglers. I make gym bags, GP pouches, pretty much anything that people want. If I can make it, I'll do it.
So gear and tactical nylon along
Yep.
those lines. All right. So you are also a fellow expatriate from the People's Republic of Washington. So we've got a little bit to bond there with.
Trauma bonding. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, nothing like having to run away from home like a 1940s refugee. So
Yeah.
but yeah, meanwhile, I am sitting here talking to you in my garage, surrounded by American flags, drinking. I have this vodka I got from the store recently. There's a place up here called 44 Degrees North, and they have a Mountain Dew vodka, which is just as redneck as it sounds.
Oh, geez, dude.
Yeah, so it's it's getting pretty rough.
Well, have you seen they have the Baja Blast Hard and stuff now?
Are you serious? That's a thing?
I think so. I don't know if
Can
it's a
I?
meme or not, but
Can
yeah.
I also, dude? If Taco Bell starts slinging some hard Baja Blast, dude, my colon's never gonna recover.
Yeah. No kidding.
I'll have butthole and liver problems.
Yeah, pretty
What
much.
what a perfect combo. So, man, um, you also have a bit of experience, which I think is with like training with people. From my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong. You've got a fair experience amount of experience of training with people with a variety of different people. Some of those people, we don't have to necessarily name them, but are well known, we could say.
Yeah.
And I've trained around in some different circles as well. And I figured we would talk a little bit about kind of our experiences with different groups and kind of some of the pros and cons we've seen in this kind of community. Some of the good things you see, some of the bad things you see, things to look for, like for people who are new and are trying to find a group, like things that are kind of red flags that we've learned over time, and kind of go from there, man.
Yeah. Uh well, where do you want to start with that?
Well,
I
I
guess
guess what would be what would like how did you find your tribe, so to speak? I know that's one thing a lot of people talk about is having trouble trying to find a tribe in the first place. Especially in certain areas, it seems to be harder than in other areas. So if you maybe want to give a little background of like, as much as you're willing to divulge, of kind of like how you got started training, how you got into different groups in the first place.
well, Instagram is a great tool for that, even though it can be a just huge time suck sometimes. But there's a bunch of people doing a bunch of posts, on the Find Your Tribe. I know Operational Industries does it every once in a while. Reaper 1-1 or Reaper Consultation or whatever he is now. He usually does it quarterly. Um, those are good ways to reach out and find people in your area.
Yeah.
Um, and the guys that I used to train with, I found one of them on Instagram, and I was like, "Hey, you're in my area. Like, I know that. I know that shooting pit." And I went up there, took a video in the same general area, and posted it. And he goes, "Hey, I know exactly where that's at." I was like, "Oh shit!" So we ended up hanging out and went out shooting a couple times, and yeah, it was good times.
Yeah, I would say like my start's pretty similar. okay, started looking around for people in the area. Kind of came across at the time. At that time, I wasn't big on Instagram, so I found people on Facebook and kind of met up, went shooting, had a chit chat. Next thing you know, we're doing goon boy stuff out in the woods. So so yeah, I've always kind of had this theory I like to come up with that's kind of a pro and con with different types of training groups,
Yeah.
depending on the level of skill, the level of knowledge, the level of commitment, type of things to them. So I usually say there's generally about three types of people in these types of groups, right? They could be subcategorized, but the three general types of people that I generally see um, are a mixed bag. You generally have one, the good group, which is the people that really want to be there. People they want to be there, they're there for the right reasons, they want to learn, they want to train, they have an open mind, they just want to do something good to better their community and to better themselves. Then you've got the other people who are like, this is a cool way to just meet up with the boys. Like they're not necessarily bad, but they don't really necessarily take it all that seriously, and they're kind of more there just to screw off and LARP, right? And then
Mhm.
the third group would be the kind of guys who are like, this is the way I have authority. I'm in charge here. You people will listen to me. I am your king. Like that kind of thing, right? Like you get a dude who either has some kind of minimal experience and is like, I know everything. You guys shut up and listen to me. And like the guy that got bullied in high school, but instead of becoming a cop, he became this, right?
uh, yeah.
So, what would you say your experience has been similar with that, with the kind of like, a broadly speaking of the types of people you run into, unfortunately?
Uh, yeah, dude, I've met all types, and it's not just with this community. Like I used to build trucks and hot rods and stuff, and I was in car clubs before I even got into shooting, and it's the same personality types. You know,
Yeah.
the guys that want to be there, that are there for the right reasons, or the guys that are just, I control these high school kids because they just got their driver's license. And it's like
Yeah.
that's not the car club I want to be in.
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. No, I totally understand, man. Yeah, that's kind of been my experience is that it seems like there's a little bit of all of it, and the key that I think is trying to figure out how to navigate those groups, and don't throw out the baby with the bathwater, but how to, I want to say, like, politically move your way around there to make everyone, like, make sure everything kind of flows smoothly, right?
Yeah, yeah. Um, I think a good way to go about that is, you know, be selective on who you're going to go out to the woods with, and don't let that be like your first outing. Unless you're going out to the local shooting pit and you see guys out there and you're like, oh, all right, cool, strike up a conversation. Um, Being extroverted definitely helps a lot, but you know, some people just like to keep to themselves.
Would you say it's kind of been my experience that for groups that are like serious about actually training, not just going to the woods and like flat range shooting, like guys that want to get into like training on medical, on comms, on like SHTF, grid down, like small unit tactics. How do we like help each other? How do we prepare? It tends to be that most groups I see like that, and the groups I've been a part of, seem to have at least some sort of vetting process, whether that be a deep dive into your background, or whether that be like a, hey, let's invite them out for kind of a low key type of thing in a controlled environment where we can kind of gauge, who this person is and if we want to continue with this person. Would you say that your experience has been similar to that?
Um, yeah, I've run the whole gamut of that with some of the previous guys that I've trained with and whatnot. And we've had some guys where it's like, oh, dude, on paper, this guy was like legit. He's doing great. Like, let's bring him around more. Let's have him, come hang out a couple times. And then that guy comes and hangs out, and you're like, we don't know what it is, but we're all getting a bad vibe from this guy, just right from the get go. And you know, it's
Yeah.
it's one of those, it's not you, it's me. Like, yeah, we're breaking up, but
Yeah, I would say like that's the hardest part, I think, is especially especially if those tendencies don't seem to arise until after a little while. I've been a part of groups where you invite someone in, you do a vetting process. You're like, okay, this dude seems legit. He's all right. He's he's a little different, but he's okay. And then time goes by, and then it becomes like okay, that was weird, and
Yeah.
then it's a little weirder, and you're like, okay, so this guy already knows where we all live, and we have to kick him out.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely one of those, if it becomes a pattern, you know, um you got to be able to recognize patterns and see when that kind of thing comes up. We had one guy, I'm not going to mention his name, but like super awesome dude. Really fun to be around, but it was just everything was a joke. He couldn't take anything serious.
Mm,
And
hmm.
we sat down and said, "Hey man, like you need to kind of dial it back, you know. If we're out in public, you know, you don't need to be jumping around and joking and whatnot and drawing like all this like negative attention to yourself. You know, you're a funny guy, great guy. Um, but you know, we had to sit him down and talk to him, and then we had
Right.
the same thing again, and then the third time it was like, listen, like three strikes, you're out, bud. And then he, you know, shaped up and got his shit together, and you know, it is what it is.
Yeah, and I would say for those listening to who are trying to start a group, or you have a small group and you want to bring in other people and expand too, um, I would say just be very careful on how you vet people and make sure that you're value aligned, right? Like you have similar values, similar ideas.
Yeah.
Don't just take in everybody, right? You want to, if you don't want to have the guy that comes in and like you're all training and the next thing you know he's like, the government is full of lizard people, and you're like, unless you're all the lizard people, like unless you're all on board with that, like you just gotta like maybe not have that guy around,
And
you know what I mean? Like,
they kind of are all lizard people though. So
hey, I'm not saying they're not. I'm just saying if you're the only lizard person believer in your group, it gets weird. All right. So find your fellow lizard hunters. Um,
yeah.
but yeah, no, nothing sucks more than being the only guy that takes something seriously in a group of dudes that doesn't, or vice versa. Right. Because I've seen it go both ways, right? Where you have the one dude who's just a super hard ass the whole time and nothing is ever funny and you can't get along with him. And then you have the other guy who everything is a joke. He won't take anything seriously, doesn't learn from his mistakes. Everything's going on. And you're like, dude, we are trying to learn something here. This isn't like
Yeah.
fuck around with the boys' time. Like, I'm trying to teach you dudes how to, like, throw on a tourniquet properly.
Yeah. And it's good to have that healthy balance, you know, little column A, little column B, but like know when it's time to buckle down and get serious is always a good, you know, sign of maturity.
Absolutely. What has your experience been with when look, I guess let me like kind of phrase this a little bit differently. So I've been a part of a group who has trained with other groups, right? I've done that several other times with several groups where we'll cross train with different groups from people that have their own thing going on. And one thing it always never fails is there always seems to be like this massive like ego issue
Mm.
that pops up, to where like if you're in group A and you're like, hey, group B, you seem like cool dudes. We should do a joint training.
Yeah.
I've yet to go to one of those that goes incredibly smoothly. Like some of them do, right? But there always seems to be like these guys are retarded. No, these guys are retarded. Like back and forth kind of thing, Like, oh, we wear blue, they were yellow. They're dumb.
Yeah. Probably if you're gonna do that, and I'd say go to like one of the big airsoft wars, you know. That's where
Yeah.
everyone's there to have a good time, but you know, your group and their group can kind of like, okay, hey, we're gonna go off over here and we're gonna work on this, and just try to shoot each other with BBs. And that sounds like a good time to me. But yeah, the um ego is a big thing for pretty much every guy out there. Even if the most humble guys. You know, you gotta you gotta learn to keep that in check. But I'm not the best at it either. But
Yeah,
it's something I got to work on.
I think that's one thing that I think about sometimes is as much as we like as much as like it's kind of a meme where people are like, oh, if there's a civil war in America, like we'd stomp the left in a heartbeat. And the only thing that makes me think that that's not like an incredibly super realistic idea is that like you can't even get like two groups of six dudes apiece to agree on like one proper thing. You know, if you have a group of six dudes who've been training together and a separate group of six dudes who've been training get together, it's very hard, in my experience, to get both of those dudes to come together, be a group of 12, and like at the end of the day, be like, you guys are all right. Like, meanwhile, the left is just like, I am a hive mind. I will do as the leader says, and we will all conform. So, like, they're much better at organizing, I would say, than people in this community.
Yeah, well, when you have the lizard people leading you,
Just something about those sideways eyes, man.
yeah, yeah, I don't know. But yeah, I don't think it's going to be a left versus right when there's a civil war. It's going to
No,
be
not at all.
whoever comes to
Yeah.
the doorstep. You know, that's
I,
it's just not going to be a good time for anyone.
no,
Oh shit, I lost you. You still there?
it'd be like that sometimes.
Yeah,
Sometimes this app hates us.
yeah. Well, can't talk bad about the lizard people running everything, right?
Yeah, you said lizard people three times, and yeah, there you
Oh,
go.
Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice. Oh wait.
Yeah, okay, actually, so speaking of lizard people, did you see the thing lately that's been making the rounds where Nancy Pelosi was on some news show and said that she's like more reptilian, she's cold blooded, and everyone's like, "Oh, she admitted it! She admitted it!"
Dude, I barely keep up on any current events unless
uh, it's
memes
just
we send each other.
I was listening to something like a Tim Pool clip, and they played it, and I was like, "Oh, epic! They admit it."
Uh,
Uh, it's like, grab the boys. We're going to the flat Earth. Let's go.
uh, you gotta go down into Argartha and find them that way.
Dude, no joke. I like to listen to like play drive sometimes, and I was listening to an Agartha thing the other day, and I was like, "This is some wild crap, dude." I
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty nuts.
was like, "Call of Duty Zombies had it right. Who knew?"
Yeah,
But yeah, so yeah, so moving on to a different topic. So obviously you make gear, right?
yeah.
And you obviously have an idea of what you're doing because you make some pretty good stuff. So, like, what kind of got you into making gear? Was it more of a hobby that kind of led into that, or was it like like a hole in the market that you wanted to fill, or like what made you wake up one day and be like, I could make that?
Um, I'm I'm pretty crafty when it comes to stuff. I mean, I can, I can work on cars. I can figure stuff out. I've done construction. I've done just about everything, with my hands. And I figured, hey, why not? So, I wanted to make a little IFAC for when I started doing security work, and I wanted something horizontal. But the was the Blue Force
Mm-hmm.
mini belt
Yeah,
back was always
that's
sold out. And I was like,
that's the IFAC I have.
yeah. And I was like, let's see, like, how hard would it be? So I started patterning it out with, 3x5 cards and painter's tape and whatever I had lying around. And then I had like an old what was it? It was like an old plate carrier that was just thrashed, and I cut that up and I laid out the patterns, and I just hand stitched it all with just a whip stitch, and it took forever.
It sounds like it.
Yeah, I was like, well, that was a fun way to waste a week, you know, when I'm sitting waiting for my next shift to go. Uh,
Yeah.
so I kind of went, well, I'll get a sewing machine, and then I can start making stuff, and but I really want this, and oh, this is really cool. And I uh I went to another guy I found on Instagram, and his name's Rendezvous here, and he makes really good stuff. And I was like, hey man, I'm looking for something, this is when the micro chest rigs were like a big thing. And I had like a Haley micro, and I was like, well, I want something, not so pooched out with that admin in the front. And I want this, but I still need to be able to carry this. And I drew up a design for a harness kind of system. And I got in touch with him and was like, hey, I really like your placard because it holds three AR mags and then a pistol mag. But instead of going out, I'd rather go around. And if you could do that, like, here's the design, here's everything that I think you'd need. And he's like, all right, perfect. Yeah, I could do that. What are your measurements? So I went and got my measurements and gave him everything. And then he's like, yeah, I can do it, but it's not going to be cheap. And I was like, okay, what are we looking at? Because I already asked Extreme Gear Labs. That's another great guy to follow.
Yeah. Yeah, he makes some cool stuff.
And I asked him about it in one of the lives he did, and then we had a couple emails back and forth. He's like, "Yeah, for that you're gonna be looking like 600-800 bucks and like
Whew!
6-month lead time." And I was like, well, I'm impatient, so
Yeah.
I found Rendezvous here, and I asked him, and he's like, "Oh yeah, dude, I could do it." And it cost a pretty penny, but it wasn't nearly that much, and I had to make it, and it was everything I wanted. It worked out great, and I beat the piss out of it, and it's still going strong. And that's my main go-to when I'm not rocking my own stuff.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. I really like your idea of your Claymore bag that you have
oh yeah, yeah,
as like a super awesome, like I think of it as like an expanded bandolier in a way.
yeah.
Does that make sense? Like maybe you could go into detail a little bit and kind of explain, like give like the idea of the Claymore bag. Like, I think it's a great idea. I think it's a quick, like an awesome like grab and go if you kind of want to explain like the concept of it.
Yeah. So the concept is I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, and I like bushcraft. Um, and there's a whole bunch of like haversacks and satchels out there, and you know I was looking at them, and I was like, well, that one's too big, and that one's too small, and that one's not wide enough. And I picked up a sewing machine, and I was like, well, I can make my own. So I kind of got the dimensions for everything, and I started making it. And I was like, well, Tigris is the hot new thing. Let's throw some of that in there and to stiffen it up and make it hold its shape. And once I sewed it all up, I was able to carry 10 mags in that thing. Or um, the way I would run it is I'd run like 4 mags in that, and then I'd have a water bottle and my radio and all this extra crap. And then I started building more and more attachments for it, and that's been my go-to since yeah, for a hot minute.
So for those who aren't aware of Cedar Sewing Company and kind of what he does, like imagine like a messenger bag, right? But like you said, you could fit 10 AR mags in it, or you could
Yeah,
fit a couple AR mags, maybe some spacers and some other gadgets, but basically like a quick grab and go messenger bag that you could turn into like a grab and go blowout kit type of deal. Like I think it's a really awesome idea in the sense that you literally just throw one strap over you, and you've got it.
Yeah,
Like you basically wear it.
yeah, it'll fit AR and AK and something like 400 rounds a link. I don't know. Machine guns are the cool new thing, so that fits in
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's super cool. I think it's a great idea for something like grab and go type of kit. Like if you have to have like one of those, like the house is on fire, we have to leave now. Like
Yeah,
it's one thing you can grab or something you can keep in your vehicle. The other thing too, though, is like if you're talking 10 AR mags, that's also just a great way to have like a resupply that's quick and easy to grab. You know,
yeah,
and instead of doing the trick where you throw 8 mags in a bandolier and throw it in an ammo can and hope for the best, you just load that thing up, set it in the bed of the truck. You go out and do some goon boy stuff and have someone run it out to you when you need a resupply, and you got 300 rounds.
yeah,
You know, I mean, I think it's a great concept, and I really like some of the stuff that you do. And I like, for me, like the biggest thing that I think has been awesome about getting into this podcast and some of the community is that, and in some of the meetings with the people in the community, is that like being able to meet people who are having these like forward thinking ideas like yourself, who are smaller companies that I'd much rather support you than someone who's already making millions of dollars on their ideas.
yeah,
You know, I mean, like that's kind of my thing is like I've had a, you know, I've talked to you. I mean, we meme each other back and forth all day long. And it's like I'd much rather buy your stuff than I would go out and buy Haley Strategic. You know, nothing against Haley Strategic. That's good stuff, but I'd rather support you. You know what I mean?
yeah. I really, really appreciate that, and so does all the other small businesses out there. We all appreciate, everyone looking out for each other. That really helps out.
And to all the hype lords out there that are like, oh, it's got to be Haley Strategic or like Onward Research or whatever, right? Like, just remember that those guys, I mean, yeah, those guys are cool. And yeah, they've got their Instagrams and their Facebooks and all this stuff. But there is a ton of cool stuff that is out there that is one, probably local to you, two, small business, and three, just as good a quality for way less of a price.
Yeah,
So just remember that, guys, when you're out there. So, and yeah, I mean, like, I just gotta say, like, I'm a big fan of your stuff. I like your ideas that you come up with on that. I like the, like, I think the Claymore bag is like a pretty original concept to me. Like, I
yeah.
haven't really seen much out there like it.
Uh, well, I did a lot of research, and I've seen a lot of very similar ideas. Just the execution's different on a lot of them. You know, there
Yeah,
there's a whole slew of gear companies that are targeted towards like bushcrafting, not even the tactical stuff.
right.
And that's where I get a lot of inspiration from as well. So look at their stuff. I'm like, oh, dude, that looks awesome. Like, what if it would fit this? Well, let's make it and find out. You know, I'll sit
Yeah.
here and prototype stuff for days trying to figure it out, and then once I do, it works or it doesn't. You know.
You know, I wish that is one thing that I don't know what we'd call it, the tactical community, I guess, in on Instagram or social media as a whole, what they would take more interest in is the bushcraft side of things.
Yeah.
Um, I think it's going to be like obviously the shooting and scooting part's pretty cool, but also knowing how to like make a shelter in the wilderness without a tent is also pretty cool.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I've done some stuff before where we do like a winter overnight, and basically the concept of the idea is like you're allowed to bring you can't bring it a real tent. You can bring like a tarp and stuff, right? But you can't bring a real tent. You have to make your shelter, and wherever we park the trucks, and once you leave the truck and you lock your doors, that's it. If
Yeah.
you left it in the truck, like you're screwed. That doesn't matter. You just got to live without and figure it out. And we're gonna go camp overnight in the wind, in the snow, in the middle of January, February, in the Pacific Northwest, and you got to make it. You got to make it a full 24 hours to 48 hours, whatever we decide on. And it's been a lot of fun doing that. It's also been a big learning experience to make sure, one, that you forget, that you remember everything, and two, like, what did you really need and what did you not need?
Yeah. Yeah. That's another big one is every time you go out, you know, just you don't have to write it down, but just take a mental note. Like I've gone out times where I'm like, oh, I've got, a 20 by 30 tarp, so we can make this big elaborate structure and we can do all this. And I have like 3,000 feet of bank line or paracord or whatever. I'm like, we didn't really need all that. We just needed like an 8 by 10, a couple sticks, and, some string
Yeah.
out. So, taking a mental note of everything is a, is a big one where, you don't have to take like, that's another, reason why I built that Claymore bag is, hey, we're going out for an overnight. I don't need to take, my full chest rig and like, 40 mags. We're not expecting, anyone out there. We're not going to be setting up an ambush. We're not going to be doing any of this. I just need the bare essentials. And that allowed
Yeah.
me to throw all that on my shoulder with my ruck on and just walk out there and like, oh, hey, this is this is cake when you don't have 20 pounds of crap on you, you know.
Yeah, I remember the very first time. So like when I first started getting into like prepping and this kind of like a Minuteman type of thing, my grandfather gave me his large Alice pack. And I remember the first time I packed it, I was like, everything. I got to be prepared to walk away from home and never have anything again. And I just packed everything I had in this bag, right?
Yeah.
Put on my kit, threw on my pack to see what it was like. I was like, holy crap, this is super heavy. Went to go weigh my pack. It was like 85 pounds.
Oh, that's not that
Yeah.
bad.
I mean, not bad for it was like not bad if you're preparing for like the end of the world, I guess. But I was like, oh yeah, this is for like a 3 day thing. And I
Yeah.
had like, it was like the first time I'd ever really done something like that. And I hadn't even joined the Navy yet. I wasn't even in the military yet. Hadn't learned any of this stuff. And I'm just sitting there thinking like I have to put everything I own in this bag. And I had like, full jars of peanut butter and like cans of soup, like in this bag. And I'm like, oh, geez, dude, this thing is super heavy.
Yeah.
I don't, and then, as time and experience comes along, you're like, okay, well, I didn't need that. Well, I didn't need this. Okay. Instead of having three separate tools that do one job, I have one tool that does three jobs,
Yeah.
and you start to learn from experience, kind of like, the value of certain things, like what you absolutely have to have, what you can live without. Like, okay, I don't need I don't need to bring any canned food for any reason. I can bring different things. There's alternatives to this, and for cookware or for heating solutions or for shelter, I can bring these different things, and you learn all that from experience and getting out to do it, which is why I think it's huge to go out and, it's nice to go out and buy things, but it's better to go out and try things,
Yeah.
like go out and test your kit. And I know for some people, there's like this mental block where it's like, but I spent so much money on it. I'm going to wait till I need it. It's like I bought $400 pants. They're cries. I never wear them because they're $400.
Yeah.
Well, then why did you spend the money?
Right. Yeah. I mean, you want to talk about overpacking. My buddy, uh, we'll just call him Chainsaw Charlie. Me and him, we'd, we'd go out on the river and we'd bushcraft, shelters and stuff. And I really got into that. And then once I started training with this group of guys, I was like, well, I'll bring him up on the mountain. And he's notorious for, bringing everything in the kitchen sink. And I told him, I was like, dude, pack light, I mean, it's only like 4 miles, 5 miles up, but we got to climb a rock face. We got to do all this stuff. And he's like, oh yeah, no problem. No problem. And we got to the parking spot and I was like, all right, empty out everything you don't need. Like, let's see how heavy your stuff is. And he's like, oh, okay. Well, I packed light and he carried probably close to 120 pounds up this mountain.
Holy crap.
He had his main ruck and then he had like basically an assault pack with all of his extra stuff, and then he had his chainsaw and like a couple gallons of fuel. So
Jeez.
yeah, he's a beast.
You
Great
know,
guy.
like if you're gonna be that guy, like I gotta say, like I don't know what this guy's experience is, but like if you're the guy that's gonna be carrying that much weight, please do yourself a favor and practice. Like ruck
Oh,
and
dude,
go out
that
and
was
figure it out. Like if you don't think you're gonna wake up day one and be a wildland firefighter, you
yeah,
know?
and like that was pretty normal for him. Like he doesn't drive a car, so he rides his bike everywhere, and he has all this crap. And like when we go bushcraft stuff, we bring out like 5 pound box of nails, or big spikes, and
Yeah.
bring out all this extra stuff and be hauling driftwood and junk off the river to make these shelters. And so it I mean, he was winded when he got up there, but he did fine. It didn't really phase him.
Well, that's good. That's good. Yeah, no, that's one thing I think that is not emphasized enough in this community is the idea of the importance of bushcraft and learning skills of like, hey, here's how to start a fire without a lighter, and hey, here's how to build a shelter. And I know, like for me, one of my things I can just get a huge time suck in is just going down the YouTube rabbit hole of like bushcraft shelters that people will do.
Oh, dude. Yeah. It the
Like guys in like northern Canada that are just like, oh, hey there, bud. I just built I just built a shelter out of two twigs and a bird feather.
Yeah.
And you're like, how would you do this?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, or
Like the
or
guys
some of these guys will just like,
dugouts and
what was
all
that?
the guys that are building the dugouts and like
Yeah,
moving stone for ages, and you're just like, dude, that's awesome, but like I'm not gonna do that overnight. Like they're
exactly,
working on
exactly.
that.
Like there's one dude I was watching on like some YouTube shorts or something, and he did one where he built a little dugout and he built himself a sound studio in there and had a generator. Like he was living like pretty luxurious
Oh, jeez.
in a little dugout thing. Like it was pretty dope. And I was like, man, like that's so awesome. But I was thinking more like, hey, I'm in the middle of a snowstorm and I need to like not die tonight. Not like I've got a 6 week construction project.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's snow is a completely different beast.
No, for sure. I think that's one thing that's interesting about this is like getting to know people from all over the country too, as well, is seeing especially like some of the bushcraft stuff in different areas. And
Oh,
it's funny because like I know you and I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, and so like harsh winters are not uncommon, right?
yeah.
Especially in the mountains, like having some real rough winters up there and learning how to stay warm is a necessity. But then I talk to some of these guys who they're in like Florida, and their concerns are entirely different, you
Yeah.
know. And so that's kind of been an interesting thing is getting to know people around the country and kind of seeing how the things that like I've learned either how they need to be changed or applied differently in different areas, especially when it comes to shelters, and different types of bushcraft skills. It's very interesting to see like kind of the comparison from across the country, which I think this has kind of been really awesome to see this kind of rise of this kind of stuff in Instagram. And I don't know if maybe it's a rise in it or maybe I'm just more plugged into it and that's why I'm seeing it. But seeing Instagram become less of a hype lord platform and more of like an educational thing, at least in the circles that I'm following, has been super awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, dude. The educational, content that's being put out now is just it's so refreshing, you know.
Yes. Yeah. I think it's really refreshing in the sense too that like that I know sometimes you get out there and like you see some of the crazy stuff that's happening out in the world and you're like, dude, am I the only one that's still got my head on my shoulders? And then you see someone else post ideas that you're talking about and you're like, oh, hey, I'm not the only one. Like there's other people like me out there. Like this is cool, you know? Or
Yeah.
different ways of thinking, different ideas where you're like, oh man, I never would have thought of that. Like that's really cool. Um, those are the kind of things I like seeing, and like different kit setups and things like that. And the thing I like the most, which is why I wanted to get kind of your opinion too on gear a little bit, is like I like seeing people doing kit setups that don't involve like, hi, I'm so and so, and I used my trust fund to buy like just what the best things on Instagram told me. But people being practical
Yeah.
and being like, I put value as well as like I put a budget, but I got value for it. You know, like I got good stuff, but I didn't blow the bank. And I think like it's been really interesting to kind of see the trends as they roll. I know it's something I've talked about before on the podcast. From like plate carriers were the big thing, then it was chest rigs, and now belt kits come back into fashion, and just kind of seeing everyone try to like adapt in all the different companies, being like, oh, belt kit's cool again. Quick, make a $1,200 set of suspenders. You know?
Yeah.
So for me, it's awesome to see one, people like you producing cool products that are like in that kind of like you're ahead of the trend because you're actually out there doing it. Um, and being able to put cool stuff out there, but also people being like, hey, I don't have to spend $800 on a chest rig. I could use whatever.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I went on a website and priced out, the cool new split rig once those started getting popular.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, you know what, just for fun, let's add all the stuff that I would want and that I would need from this company alone. And yeah, it came out to 700-800 bucks, and I was like, man, it looks so cool though. Like, like, well, I guess I guess I'm gonna have to wait for the next guy to come out with something. And
Yeah.
then you know, there's dude, if you want to talk split rigs, since split rigs and belt kit are the new hotness, there's a couple other small companies out there that are doing some awesome stuff. There's Teardown Systems. They got a split rig, and it's really well priced, and it looks incredible. Um, I was I was about to pull the trigger on it a week or two ago, and then some stuff came up. But you know, that looks great. And then there's another guy called Project Redacted, and I want to say it's him and his wife, but they're starting with some belt kit stuff. And what's his name? Night Fighter used
Yeah.
it on
Yeah.
Copperhead, I think. I think he used the belt kit on that.
Yeah.
Or
He's got some cool stuff out there, sure, out there for sure.
yeah, Night Fighter's another great one. And then I could just list gear companies for forever because that's pretty much my whole Instagram feed is gear companies and a couple memes and like cat videos. You know?
You know, I think that's the cool thing about it though, right? Because like mine's very similar. Is that you get exposure to a lot of like smaller companies, right? Like
Yeah,
whether it be one guy or a handful of guys, and they're doing really cool stuff that's not super corporatized. It's not like, hey, we're trying to get government contracts, so shut up and pay me. It's like, hey, here's a really cool product. I'm enthused about it. I think it's awesome. It's affordably priced.
yeah,
Go out, go forth and prosper. Because I think that's the one thing that one of the things that we see a lot with the gear companies is they're so expensive because part of the thing is they're all trying to get government contracts, right? And if they sell it to the government, they can't sell it to you for less than what they sell it to the government for. So they're going to hike up prices. They're going to make it super expensive. Um, it's one of those things where it's like you look at something and you're like, why is this chest rig $800?
yeah.
Like, why could I buy an AR for the price of this chest rig? Like this, it's nylon, like
Well, I mean, the stuff I make isn't, cheap by any means, but it's it's time consuming, like those Claymore bags that I make. each one of those takes about 10 hours, which is just an absurd amount of time.
But I think there's more value in paying, for example, for when it's one person making it, right? Like
Yeah,
you, it's understanding like you're charging a little bit higher of a price in that sense where, but you're making it yourself as one person. And so you've got to cover your costs and everything. And like, then that's understandable, right? And you're getting a certain level of value and quality control start to finish. But
yeah,
when you're a major company and you've got a warehouse of people on sewing machines just cranking crap out wholesale, and you're still charging $800 a piece,
yeah.
dude, come on.
Yeah. No, I get that.
Right.
Yeah.
That's just my thing. Is like that's part of the reason why I wanted to bring you on here too is to talk about how how like hey there's like yes there's all this hype beast stuff that's out there and yeah you might look super cool for the gram getting all your clout but there's also plenty of stuff out there that works literally just as good. Not like oh it's just as good but like no like it literally is
Yeah.
and or it might even be better in certain regards for fitting your needs. Because that's one thing I think is that like the thing I like about the Claymore bag is I feel like that fits a lot of needs in a lot of different ways and can be configured in a ton of different ways
Yeah.
and be more useful than like a plate carrier or a chest rig or something like that, you know? I think I think it has a little bit more uses for it. It's a little more well-rounded in that regard.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, dude, I use mine every day, and I don't exaggerate when I say that. I mean, it's my basically man purse. It's also my lunchbox. It's also when I go to the range, it's loaded up with ammo, and I always have medical on it. So, you know, I was working at a car dealership, and they're like, "Oh, nice man purse." I'm like, "Yeah, well, it's my fucking lunchbox today." Like, they're like, "What's that underneath it?" I was like, "Medical for when you get crushed by a car." You know?
Yeah. Which that's one thing too is like you're going to use medical way more often than you probably are going to use a firearm, right? So having a bag like that that allows you to have medical as attachment, the likelihood of you using medical is much higher than you actually using a firearm.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like one of the things I had for a while, I think the company was called Trauma Pack. I had it from. It was like a drop leg type of thing that had basically it was an IFAK with four that could hold four mags between it was a drop leg that held four mags and an IFAK was attached to it. And my thought was like this would be something that could like compact that could fit in the center console at the that
Yeah.
would just be like a nice little grab and go type of thing, right? This is before I ever found out about your bag, and I've used that for helping out with people who like got in a car wreck in front of me, like way more than I've had to use my firearm.
Yeah. Yep. Um, yeah, dude, there's a lot of gear out there, and a lot of it is really like niche, but like, it's made for a reason. And, like who was I was listening to someone, and they were talking about like Shaw Concepts. And like, yeah, dude, he makes this stuff to fit, his needs for his kit, and that's what he does. And just it happens to work for other people. And dude, that guy makes some great stuff too, you know. Um,
Yeah,
but it's one of those you can either see. The tough thing is like when you're designing a piece of kit, you know, when I was designing like the Claymore bag, I wanted it to do a few things really well, but I also wanted it to be like, it's just a fucking messenger bag. It's, the gray man, the EDC shit, all
yeah,
that stuff. And that's what I use it for mostly.
yeah. Well,
And it works out great for that.
I think the thing that gets that I like is that from my experience, a lot of the stuff that you put out that you're making is practical and it's not like that's not over the top. Like for example, like I have to put this out there. No hard feelings for this guy, but 100 concepts. And if you're listening, I'm sorry, but 100 concepts. Um, the dude that makes
Yeah.
the light cap covers,
Uh-huh.
right? I just in my head, I cannot justify like aren't those things like $75?
Oh, I have no idea. I just know I can't afford it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is I'm like, it's a lens cap with freaking bungee cord, dude. I'm like, how? Like, I can't wrap my head around it. Like, that's the kind of thing where, like, when it comes to certain types of gear things on Instagram, where I'm like, dude, just stop wasting your money. You know, like you're paying $75 for something I made with a Sig Romeo 5 lens cap and duct tape.
Oh, dude, no shit. I did
Like,
the same thing.
I'm saying, I was like, dude, for real, like I like the Sig Romeo 5 optic or like any red dot optic, like the little rubber covers that come with it, right?
Yeah.
You cut it right in the middle. Now you've got two of them. Perfect. Right? Slide it over the edge of a Surefire, electrical tape that thing in place. Boom. It's like that guy from Atlantis who's like, look, I'm at a bridge. It's like, look, I'm at a light cap. Right? Same
Yep.
crap. Did it for free. Otherwise, I'm paying $75 for a 3D printed lens cover and bungee cord. Do you know how much 556 that is? Do you know how much other crap I could buy for $75? You know?
Yeah.
Like,
I do like I want to get one eventually because I do like the idea of it being able to, flip over to the side. That's nice. And
I,
I like the kill flashes and the scope covers because like I haven't priced any of his stuff out, but like there's some R&D time. You got to make that up somewhere. But
for sure. It's just for me, like if you came to me and were like, hey, do you want to buy a lens cover for $75? Get the fuck out of here. Like, I don't know. For me, I just like I look at that sometimes and it's like I wish the guy all the best, right? I hope his company prospers. I hope he does great things. But it's one of those things where I'm like, dude, I can't justify mentally spending $75. And I think that's what the price is. I'm probably wrong. Someone's gonna be on here and be like, it's $20. What are you talking about? But I can't justify spending that kind of money on something that covers a flashlight. It's like, dude, come on, man.
yeah, yeah, no, there's like it's a it's a niche thing. So I mean, it
Yeah.
shouldn't be a niche thing. You know, you should have a light on your fighting rifle. But
Oh, absolutely. You should have a light. I just can't justify that kind of money to do that where I'm like, there's so many other alternatives.
yeah, there is definitely more than one way to skin a cat.
Yeah. With that being said, I think that again, coming back to it, I think there's just a lot of stuff out there that it kind of banks off of the hype, not off the practicality, right? That you get a lot of gear or a lot of products, you put it in the right cool guy's hands that says something cool about it, and then you just basically have a blank check for whatever you want to put as the price because ooh, Grand Thumb said it was cool, so I have to buy it now. You know,
Yeah, yeah,
and I think that is a fatal flaw. Granted, I get it; it's a business. Everyone's running a business; they got to make their money. But I think it's a fatal flaw in the gun community. Is there's very much like a keeping up with the Joneses type of vibe,
hmm
to where everyone's like, oh, I have to get the cool thing, I have to get the next big thing. Instead of just working with what's good for you and being like, hey, I don't have to be the biggest hype lord out there. Like, if a Chicom chest rig is what you're running and it works great for you, yeah, there's other stuff out there. Yeah, there's better stuff out there. But if that's what's, laying it down and you're getting it done with that, sick, dude, rock that Chicom,
yeah.
you know? That's I don't know, that's just kind of my thing.
I mean, yeah, the hype culture is one thing, but if you really want like to get the sickest gains and like gain the most muscle and like be super fit, I do have a gym bag that's dropping. So, it'll just
Sick.
help you out. Uh, I'm going to jump on that hype beast train for a little bit because I
I
pay bills.
I shameless plug. No, I do like the idea of like the gym bag thing.
Yeah.
For me, like the gym bag because like it's really like for me. Whenever I would go over and see family on the coast,
Yeah.
um, I always liked to pack a lot of my gear inside of a gym bag. Like I'd usually have a battle belt rolled up, like a small chest rig, in a gym bag because it's unassuming, right? Like so, there's certain bags that people carry that you look at and you're like, that's a gun, right?
Yeah.
Like I remember I bought a bag one time and I thought it was super unassuming until it showed up and I was like, oh, dude, this is 100% I have a gun, but I don't want anybody to know I have a gun. And it's like a gym bag. Like no one bats an eye at that, right? Like you could fit a ton of stuff in a gym bag depending on the size of that bag, right? So I think gym bags were great for rifle bags, for kit bags, things like that. Trying to keep a low profile. Everyone goes to the gym. You fit right in, not a big deal. It's one of those things where it's like the one I had, dude. It's like it was like an over the like a sling bag and
Yeah.
I thought it was way smaller, but it's like it looks like the size of a baby casket.
Oh, jeez. That's a perfect.
It's like if you were to fit a toddler in a casket, and it's shaped like a casket even. And like when I saw it, I was like, dude, this is not what Amazon said. Like it came in the mail and I was like, oh, this is 100% I have a gun.
Well, yeah, dude. Uh, finding a good bag that could fit a. I mean, I have an Everly stock backpack, and it's forest green. It's or foliage green. It's not the Ranger green. And when I was living in Seattle and working security, like I had my short boy in there because I had that law folder and
Yeah.
got that bag because it fit my rifle specifically. And it was great because I was working a security job. People thought I was just commuting with all my crap, going to and from work and the gym, and no one thought anything of it. And I still had my rifle on me.
Yeah.
It was great.
Yeah, dude, that's the thing is like if you can find a way, like there's so many like tactical things and like gun guy things out there for that, that look really cool or anything like that. But anyone who has half a brain knows that like, hey, that screams I have a gun.
Yeah.
And more these days, like I don't have stickers on my truck. I don't have anything that says like I'm a gun guy on my vehicle. Um, I've got a bunch of gun guy shirts, but that's because I worked at a gun store, and it's like that's like a third of the shirts I own. But outside of that, it's like, you know, I I've come to learn that it's like it's I don't want to advertise. I want to be more low profile. If I can carry a bunch of stuff and nobody knows, that's kind of the goal. And anything with molly webbing immediately screams like, huh, this guy might be suspect.
uh yeah. Yep. And that's another reason I made that Claymore. With I mean, sewing Molly takes forever. But that's why I made that first one with, it's slick. It's got it's got a loop field on the back so I can hang my danglers and shut off of it, but it doesn't look assuming, you know.
Yeah, I think like on risking this whole interview just being one long commercial for your bag.
Yeah, it
Uh,
basically is.
no, I think that's one thing that's really cool about it is like it's basically like to me it looks I had this thing in like second and third grade. I don't know why, but I really wanted like a messenger bag backpack. I just thought it was cool, like all the hackers in movies in the early 2000s had messenger bags, and so yeah, so it's like that's kind of just what it reminded me of. It's like just like a basic messenger bag, and it very unassuming, very like something you could have like in the back of your vehicle and not not really like no one's gonna like think anything weird about it, you know.
Yeah. Yep.
And I'm assuming that was the goal. But yeah, I mean that was the thing was like I was like, oh dude, this is sick because like you could just you could just use it. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't have to be tactical related. You could
Yeah.
just like, hey, you've got newborn kids. Guess who's got a daddy diaper bag that
Yeah.
also fits your Glock 34?
Yeah.
Like yeah, that's the cool thing about it, right? It's like, oh, you want to have a couple bags and a bunch of diapers in there at the same time? Perfect. You know, you need to carry a gun? Perfect. Like, you could just do so much with it. I think it's awesome.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm
But yeah,
working on a
man,
different now, but we'll get there.
for sure, for sure. Well, yeah, man, I think that's awesome. Some of the stuff that you're doing. Where can people find you, man? Like if they're intrigued at all about this Claymore bag that we've mentioned like a bajillion times by now, where can they
Oh,
find you?
well, you can find me on Instagram. It's cedar_sewing_co.
And I'll
Um,
have your stuff in the description below.
awesome. And then I just got my website halfway going, and that's just cedarsewingco.com.
Sweet,
Um,
man.
I'm still working on that. Hopefully, it'll be up pretty soon. And then, yeah.
Also, all right, man. Well, that's awesome, dude. I hopefully people here will be intrigued at least and trying to check it out. I'm a big supporter of what you do. I think you got some good stuff out there. I think like I said, I like your ideas that you come up with. I think you're very forward thinking with this, and I think part of that is being out there and physically doing some of this stuff
Yeah.
is it plays a big role in that, and being like, hey, I'm actually doing it, and being like, hey, it'd be really cool from the last time I did this one thing is if I had this product, and you're like, oh, I could just go make it.
Yeah. Well, that's a blessing and a curse because then you sit here trying to design stuff forever. But it's fun. I really appreciate all the kind words, dude.
Absolutely, man. Well, hey, man, thanks for coming on. Everybody else, thanks for listening. This has been another episode of Mid Tier Thoughts. It's been awesome. Catch you next time.
All right.